What's going on, everyone? Chris back again with episode 26 of What Could Have Been in Wrestling. This week's topic has been requested by multiple people, and it takes us back now almost 11 years ago. And it talks about what if CM Punk didn't walk out of the WWE in January of 2014. So let's just jump right into it. Obviously, anyone who's a big CM Punk fan or was following the product at the time will remember that at the Royal Rumble, while it looked like CM Punk was going to win it possibly, Dave Bautista had come back and he was the one who wound up winning it to the applause of nobody. And CM Punk had actually been eliminated. He was in the Final Four, but Kane came out, threw him over the top rope from the apron, and then after beating him up on the outside, he chokeslammed him through a table. And that image of him being chokeslammed afterwards is the lasting image and the final image we'd seen of CM Punk on WWE television for a long time. To get into it a little bit, when he was on a podcast on Thanksgiving night of 2014 with, let's just call him a former friend, he got into, obviously, injuries he had been dealing with and everything that led up to his walkout and his frustration with the current product and how he was being utilized, and obviously how he thought that they were going in the wrong direction with a match between Batista and Randy Orton that he said was going to stink up the place at WrestleMania, and to be perfectly honest, it would have. So let's talk about then if Punk actually had stuck around and had toughed it out through the remainder of his contract, because that's going to come up, because 2014 was his contract year. Let's talk about how I think he would have been utilized. So, right after the Royal Rumble, we go into Elimination Chamber. And in that Elimination Chamber, obviously Randy Orton was still the undisputed champion. And he actually had defeated Daniel Bryan as the final two after interference from Kane, and he retained his title. To be honest, if CM Punk is still around, I think that's actually where Daniel Bryan's title hopes end, and I think he gets wrapped up as a title contender there, and I don't ever think he gets his WrestleMania moment. I do remember it was reported back at that point that the plan originally was for Daniel Bryan to actually go against Sheamus, which was very odd to me because they had just faced each other at WrestleMania 2 years previous, so I don't know if Sheamus was going to turn heel there. But obviously it didn't happen, and Sheamus turned heel a year later, anyways, after WrestleMania 31. But if Punk is around, I don't even think he's part of that Elimination Chamber, though. I think he actually settles the score with Corporate Kane, that's what they were calling him at the time, and he gets payback on Kane for eliminating him from the Royal Rumble. So with that in mind, with CM Punk victorious at Elimination Chamber, I know that, again, going back to what he talked about when he talked about his walkout, he was slated to face Triple H, which Vince had told him was a main event caliber match, which it was, but of course CM Punk wanted to be in the main event that closed out the show. And honestly, I think that if Punk doesn't walk out, he's still slated and he's still going to have a match with Triple H. And Punk has that famous quote telling him, "I don't need to wrestle you, you need to wrestle me." And he said he was very resentful that Triple H didn't put him over 3 years ago at Night of Champions, which, to be honest, he should have done because that's when CM Punk was at his hottest. So if we still move forward with that, CM Punk, going into WrestleMania, obviously they can have their build-up. similar to what they had to their Night of Champions build, where it can be a lot of promos back and forth, and them possibly coming to blows as well. I'm talking about Punk and Triple H. But, again, this could be obviously, I guess you could look at it as a semi-main event match. I know Triple H and Daniel Bryan opened the show because of how they structured the card that year. It might have been a hot opener to get the crowd into it. But I think they still move forward with it. And honestly, WWE might not have listened to the fans. And we might have been stuck with a Randy Orton-Batista match, like I said. And those two, honestly, I can't recall ever having that good of a match, to be honest, with all the times they worked together post-Evolution. So going out of WrestleMania, even though Punk, I think, would have been the victor, I think he would have gotten the win off of a GTS, he's still not the champion. And I think Randy Orton would actually have walked out, because the crowd had turned on Batista at that point too. Randy Orton and Batista both came into WrestleMania 30 as heels. I think it actually would have closed out with Batista losing to Randy Orton and Orton still walking out as champion. Because again, Daniel Bryan would have been wrapped up at Elimination Chamber. His title quest, that is. Because I think CM Punk walking out changed everything. What can happen there is the next night on Raw, CM Punk can actually call out Orton and talk about how he defeated Kane at Elimination Chamber after getting screwed out of the Royal Rumble and a chance to main event WrestleMania. He defeated Triple H last night, and tonight he wants a shot at Randy Orton's title. After some bickering back and forth, he can manipulate Orton into putting the title on the line, telling Triple H to make the match, and then it's official. On Raw, we have Randy Orton versus Triple H. I'm sorry. Randy Orton versus CM Punk. I apologize. And with the way that match unfolds, I think that's when CM Punk gets his moment. I think he gets a post-WrestleMania moment on Raw, and I think he becomes the undisputed champion. Similar to how they had Alberto win the world title in 2013, the Raw after WrestleMania, I think that's when CM Punk becomes champion himself. He becomes the undisputed champion by beating Randy Orton on the Raw after WrestleMania. So now we're moving forward and we go ahead to Extreme Rules. And I think actually the first person to challenge him and lay claim as challenger actually would be Batista. So this is changing things a little bit because, again, the Shield is not coming out and is not going to war with a reformed Evolution yet. The Shield had just made a babyface turn. I think we can still stick with that because of the WrestleMania match they had. But I think that actually you see Batista in a one-on-one match, and I think actually he would be the first one to challenge CM Punk. And this, of course, would be at Extreme Rules. So now going into Extreme Rules, when they face, I think obviously Punk should win that match because Batista was leaving relatively soon the next month to go film Guardians of the Galaxy. And I think actually the best thing would have been for CM Punk to win via tap out with the Anaconda Vice. As a side note, I know Batista had just gotten his purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu from Cesar Gracie around that time. So you could play off of Batista's, MMA, I shouldn't say MMA, but just limited Jiu-Jitsu training. And also Punk's background, obviously, doing Jiu-Jitsu and studying MMA. And I think that's why he could win with the Anaconda Vice there. Going forward, I think actually this is where you can have Triple H trying to lay claim to being champion. Similar to what he did the night after WrestleMania 30 when he challenged Daniel Bryan for the undisputed title. You could have Evolution reform then the night after Extreme Rules now. So it's going a little bit later. Their reformation is a little bit later. And you can have them attack CM Punk When Triple H tries to make an impromptu match for himself, being the COO, he can do that. Then you can have the Shield come down and oppose the newly reformed Evolution. And that's what can kick off their feud. So they're still going to feud, it's just going to be a little bit of a delay. Oh, sorry. That being Evolution and the Shield. But now moving forward, we're going into Payback. And Payback was in Chicago. CM Punk's home. So going into that, I actually think what we can have is something that I think the fans would have really wanted. And this is where we can bring Daniel Bryan back into the title picture. And at Payback, you can have Daniel Bryan challenging CM Punk for the undisputed title. And yes, I think it could be a babyface encounter this time. Obviously, Daniel Bryan was extremely over. Going back to the podcast Punk did, he said he looked at Vince and Triple H and asked him, how is Daniel Bryan not figured in to your WrestleMania plans yet? He said he's white fucking hot right now, just like I was in 2011 before you squashed me. And he said he's the one everyone wants to see as champion. And of course, WWE did finally acquiesce, and we got that triple threat match at Mania, and Daniel Bryan getting his deserved moment. So in this scenario, when Daniel Bryan doesn't get that, he still gets a title match in Chicago, so a little bit of a road game for Daniel Bryan, but I still think he would have been over with the fans regardless of where the match took place. Because again, that yes chant was just insanely over. While they can have a very good match, I don't doubt it would be right on level with the matches they had in 2012 or the matches they had in Ring of Honor. I think actually what would happen there, and this probably wouldn't close out the show, and there's a reason for that, because we would have a fucked finish. What would happen there is I think there'd be a double down spot, and I think it would actually be Corporate Kane running in, and Corporate Kane is the one who actually attacks both of them, and we have a draw. Because again, with how hot Daniel Bryan was, you want to protect him, you don't want him losing, but I don't think they would want to take the belt off of Punk yet. Reason being, they don't want to rock the boat with him losing in his hometown, especially with his contract renewal coming up. Because again, this was his contract year again. To close out, I'm just going to, as a side note, to close out Payback, you still could have done the Shield vs. Evolution in that elimination no-holds-barred match they did. And I actually think that you'd still have the Shield going over there. So now you have CM Punk and now the Shield really as your top baby faces in the company, along with Daniel Bryan. I don't want to forget about him. Now I know going into it, I know Daniel Bryan was also out around this time because of his neck issues, and he did have to relinquish the World Heavyweight title. So that doesn't happen here either. And maybe after that match, if he can make it through Payback, considering he wouldn't have to be in so many different angles, that would have probably given wear and tear on his neck leading it up to Mania. He would have been more in a mid-card role, so I don't think his body would have had to take the beatings it did by guys like Triple H, Batista, and Orton weekly. They might have been able to push Daniel Bryan through, like I said, Payback, and then maybe after that he goes out with the neck issues. And going into after Payback, we have Money in the Bank. Now this is significant for a few reasons, because obviously we don't need to have the ladder match to determine the new undisputed champion, since the belt will no longer be vacant. And also with the Shield and Evolution angle kicking off a little bit later than when it had originally started back in 2014 in reality, I don't think we get this iconic scene with Seth Rollins turning on the Shield the night after Payback in that June of 2014 either. I think their breakup would have been postponed, and I think the feud between them and Evolution, or a new iteration of Evolution after Batista quits the WWE again to go film Guardians of the Galaxy, I think that feud is prolonged a little bit longer. So, again, now going into Money in the Bank, I think this is obviously, again, I think this is where you can slot Kane into the main event against Punk. And this time, actually, in the Money in the Bank briefcase match, I don't think Seth Rollins wins it because he hasn't turned on the Shield and joined the Authority. I think you have Orton win the briefcase. And I think what would happen there is Kane would lose, obviously, to, CM Punk, and Punk would retain the title at Money in the Bank to close out the show. Possibly in a ladder match, so it could be a one-on-one ladder match rather than that six-way they did. But again, John Cena does not get his additional reign as champion either. And now going on to the next night on Raw, this is actually where I think it could get really interesting. Because now, in the Money in the Bank match, Randy Orton, in my opinion, is the one they would have win it. Yes, the former champion, who hasn't gotten his rematch yet, if you've noticed, against Punk, chasing back and wanting to win back the Undisputed title, is now in possession for the second year in a row of the Money in the Bank briefcase. So with that in mind, this is how I think, actually, it would unfold. Because now I want to get into it being the summer of 2014. And, of course, we're in the month where CM Punk's contract expires. Remember, it was Money in the Bank of 2011 was Punk's supposed last day with the company, where that was the day his contract expired. So now it's 3 years later after the same event. I do know that they were planning another iteration of the Summer of Punk for 2014 and really making the summer focused on him to convince him to re-sign again. And while I don't think we would have gotten another pipe bomb promo or anything like that, I do know that they had plans for him, obviously, to be the main focus and probably main event SummerSlam that summer and possibly win the title there. However, in my honest opinion, Punk walked out for a reason. And in this scenario, while I think he would see it through to the end of his contract, I think he would still walk out in frustration and not walk out, but choose to not resign. Because he did say in 2014, in that podcast shoot he did, he said in 2011, he said no one talked him into resigning. He convinced himself to give it one more try. And while I know he was champion for 434 days, had good angles with, Paul Heyman and Lesnar and everything like that post-title reign, he was also losing in all the big matches he had. He lost to The Rock, he lost to The Undertaker, and he lost to Lesnar, and I know that was really getting to him. Additionally, I think he would have talked about, he would also be upset with the fact that even when he was champion, he was only closing out and main eventing the pay-per-views that weren't the non-WrestleMania pay-per-views when he was going against a Rock or Cena. All of his other matches were in the middle of the card, and it was still John Cena being the focus of the company. It honestly kind of feels like that's what it is now, where even though Cody is their undisputed champion, you can tell that the focus is on Roman Reigns versus Solo Sikoa and the whole Bloodline feud. So it just feels like Punk was always getting relegated. I don't think he would have stood for it this time around. And I don't think he would have re-signed when his contract came up. So you can have a little bit of reality mixed in here the next night on Raw, like I said, after Money in the Bank. And you can have Punk get attacked backstage. And you can have, again, Randy Orton give him the punch to the head and knock him out. And then go to the ring and say he was cashing in his Money in the Bank briefcase. Triple H with Stephanie and Vince could come out. Yeah, I think even Vince would come out for this because it is Punk. And they can talk about how if Punk wants to stay champion and talk about his contract expiring and also be re-signed as champion, he needs to come out now in the next 60 seconds or he'll be stripped of his title. That way they can mock Punk, who's unconscious backstage. He doesn't make it to the ring in time, and Randy Orton is declared the winner and new champion by default. This would get massive heat on Randy Orton, who is a heel, obviously, so it's good to get good heat on him like that. It would really piss off the fans. But it would also protect Punk because he's not taking a pinfall, and I think long-term, maybe WWE would want to do something like that to protect him in case they are able to get him to re-sign in the future, where he's not gone for 7 full years before returning to AEW first and then WWE. And I think maybe that could have enticed Punk to come back maybe after just a year or so, where he could come back still with the claim that he never got beat for the title and he got screwed out of it because of the backstage attack. And then they could build off it from there. But I think Punk's run with the WWE, while not ending in January after the Royal Rumble, due to frustration, would end when his contract came up, and he's decided he needed a break. So that's where I'm going to end it there. Let me know if you'd want to hear a part 2 about what could have been if Punk came back to the WWE maybe in 2015 or 2016, rather than doing, like I said, the AEW route that he did. And obviously let me know what you think about the possibility of the Shield staying together in this scenario for a longer time, because their feud with Evolution would kick off a little bit later than it originally had happened. Also, let me know what you think would have become possibly of Daniel Bryan going through WrestleMania as well, if they still would have had him work with Sheamus. So, again, leave your thoughts and comments down below. Let me know also what other topics you'd want me to talk about in the future. I've already had some good suggestions. And obviously, don't forget to like and subscribe as well. As a side note, I am recording this on Christmas night, so Merry Christmas, everybody. Hope everyone got everything they wanted from Santa. And also, more importantly, I hope everyone got to have some time off and also got to spend time with their friends and family. So thank you, everyone, again for the support. Thank you, obviously, for all the feedback. And I'll be back soon with another episode of What Could Have Been in Wrestling. Also, future matches for match analysis. Thanks for all your comments, and take care, everyone.